Commander Jun Park guided his small exploration vessel carefully through the asteroid field. His mission was supposed to be routine, map the outer edges of this unexplored system. The emergency beacon signal had been unexpected. Computer, confirm signal origin. Jun ordered, his fingers tapping the control panel. Signal confirmed. Unknown vessel. Located on moon surface, the mechanical voice responded. The moon was small and barren, orbiting a gas giant. As Jun approached, he spotted it. A crashed ship unlike any human design. Its hull gleamed with an iridescent blue, even half buried in the moon's dusty surface. Station command. This is Explorer 7, Jun transmitted. I've located an unknown vessel. Appears to be not one of ours. Requesting permission to investigate. After a brief silence, his communication panel crackled. Permission granted, Commander. Proceed with caution. Backup is 6 hours away. Jun landed his ship 50 meters from the crash site. He checked his oxygen supply and weapon before stepping onto the lifeless surface. Each step kicked up puffs of gray dust. The crashed ship looked even stranger up close. Its metal seemed to pulse with faint light. No obvious entry point, Jun muttered to himself, circling the vessel. Then he noticed a tear in the hull, likely from the impact. He approached carefully, shining his light inside. The beam revealed an interior unlike anything he'd seen. The walls flowed together in organic curves, with strange symbols etched into surfaces that seemed half metal, half living material. His scanner beeped suddenly. Life signs detected. Humanoid. Weak but stable, the device announced. Following the scanner's guidance, Jun navigated through the twisted corridors. The air inside was breathable, according to his instruments, so he removed his helmet. A sweet, unfamiliar scent filled his nostrils. Then he found her. She lay on what appeared to be the ship's control center. Her form was humanoid, but her skin had a subtle blue luminescence that matched the ship's hull. Her features were delicate, almost human but with an otherworldly beauty. A pendant at her throat glowed softly. Jun approached slowly. "Hello. Can you understand me?" The alien woman's eyes opened, iridescent like opals. She reached for her glowing pendant and touched it. When she spoke, her lips moved differently than the words Jun heard. "You found me. Thank you." The pendant was translating her speech. "I'm Commander Jun Park, Earth Fleet. Your ship crashed. Are you injured?" She sat up slowly. "I am Hei-Yun, Royal Princess of the Celestial Dominion. My injuries are healing." She looked around. "My ship, however, is beyond repair." Jun helped her stand. "I've never heard of the Celestial Dominion. We have observed your species from afar. This is our first direct contact." Hei-Yun studied him carefully. "You saved my life, human. By the sacred traditions of my people, I must grant you 3 wishes." Jun laughed. "Wishes? Like in fairy tales." Hei-Yun's expression remained serious. "Our abilities may seem magical to your kind, but they follow natural laws my people mastered centuries ago." To demonstrate, she approached a dead plant in a broken container, apparently part of her ship's life support system. Hei-Yun passed her hand over it, and before Jun's eyes, the wilted stems straightened and green color returned to the leaves. Small purple flowers bloomed within seconds. Jun stepped back, shocked. "How did you do that?" "Reality is more malleable than humans understand," she explained. "My gifts allow 3 wishes, each more significant than the last. Choose carefully." Jun thought of his sister back on Earth. "My sister Min has cancer. The doctors say she has months to live." Hei-Yun nodded. "Your first wish is for healing. Can you cure her?" Jun asked, suddenly hopeful. "Not from here," Hei-Yun said. "But I can give you something better." She pressed her hands together, and when she separated them, a small crystal device floated between them. "This contains medical technology your people haven't discovered yet. It will not only cure your sister but can be replicated to heal millions with similar conditions." Jun carefully took the device. It hummed with energy in his palm. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We should leave soon. My ship can take us to Earth." He-Yun nodded. "I will accompany you. Remember, you have 2 wishes remaining." As they walked toward his ship, Jun looked back at the crashed alien vessel. He had a feeling that finding He-Yun would change everything, not just for him, but for all of humanity. Jun's small spacecraft hummed steadily as it carried them through the darkness of space. He-Yun sat beside him in the co-pilot's seat, her blue luminescence casting soft shadows across the control panel. 3 days had passed since he had rescued her from the crashed ship. "Your planet grows larger in the viewport," He-Yun observed, pointing at the blue-green sphere that was Earth. "It is beautiful." Jun nodded absently, his thoughts elsewhere. The alien medical device had been transmitted to Earth ahead of them. His sister Min was already receiving treatment, with early reports showing miraculous improvement. "You seem troubled," He-Yun said, studying his face. "Is your sister not recovering?" "She is," Jun replied. "The doctors are calling it a miracle. They've already started using your technology to help others." "Then why the darkness in your eyes?" Jun sighed and gestured toward Earth. "From up here, it looks peaceful, but we're fighting 3 different resource wars. Water in Africa, rare minerals in South America, energy conflicts in Asia." He-Yun leaned forward, genuinely interested. "Tell me more about your military service." Jun's jaw tightened. "I was stationed on Mars during the rebellion 5 years ago. Colonists wanted independence. Earth wanted their resources. Millions died. And you were a soldier in this conflict." "I followed orders," Jun said flatly. "Until I couldn't anymore." Their conversation paused as Jun handled the re-entry procedures. Soon, they were descending through Earth's atmosphere, flames licking the hull of the small craft. After landing at the Beijing International Spaceport, they were immediately surrounded by security personnel and government officials. News of an alien visitor had spread rapidly. "Welcome to Earth," said Director Kim, head of the Global Space Agency, bowing slightly to He-Yun. "We're honored by your presence." The next week passed in a blur of meetings and medical examinations. He-Yun willingly shared information about her people, though she was careful not to reveal technologies that humans weren't ready for. The medical device she had given Jun had already saved hundreds of lives. One evening, Jun found He-Yun standing on the balcony of her government apartment, looking at the city lights. "Your people have been kind to me," she said as he joined her. Jun laughed bitterly. "They're being nice because they want your technology. Trust me, kindness isn't humanity's strongest trait." He-Yun turned to face him. "I've been studying your news reports. You're right about the resource conflicts." "Those are just the official wars," Jun replied. "There are dozens of smaller conflicts, all because we're fighting over things that are running out. Energy seems to be at the heart of many problems," He-Yun observed. Jun nodded. "Oil, gas, nuclear, even our renewable systems, they're all controlled by whoever has the most money or the biggest weapons." They stood in silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky in orange and purple. "I believe I know what your second wish might be," He-Yun said finally. Jun looked at her. "Can you give us clean, unlimited energy? Something no government or corporation can control." He-Yun's expression became serious. "This wish is much greater than healing one person. It will require more of my strength." "Can you do it?" "Yes, but the technology must be something your scientists can understand and replicate. Otherwise, it would create more conflict, not less." The next morning, in a secure laboratory with the world's top scientists watching, He-Yun began her work. Her skin glowed brighter than usual as she manipulated strange materials Jun couldn't identify. For hours she worked, occasionally stopping to rest when her light dimmed dangerously. "She's burning herself out," whispered Dr. Lee, the lead physicist. Finally, He-Yun stepped back from the workbench. There sat a small device no bigger than a shoebox. This is a prototype fusion reactor, she explained, her voice weaker than before. It uses materials common on Earth and produces no harmful radiation. Tests confirmed her claims. The device generated enough power to run a small city, using only water as fuel. The blueprints were simple enough that any nation could build their own. That night, Joan found He-yun in her room, her luminescence noticeably dimmer. "You've given us a gift that could change everything," he said softly. "I hope it brings peace," she replied. But later that week, as they watched the news reports of governments already arguing over control of the new technology, Jum's expression darkened again. "Nothing changes," he muttered. "We just find new things to fight over." He-yun placed her hand on his arm. "You still have one wish remaining, the most powerful one." June looked at her, his eyes troubled. "I'm starting to think humanity needs more than just technology to save itself." June woke up screaming, his body drenched in sweat. The same nightmare again. The small digital clock beside his bed showed 3:24 a.m. He sat up, trying to steady his breathing. The dreams were becoming more frequent since He-yun had arrived on Earth. It was as if her presence was stirring up memories he had tried hard to bury. A soft knock came at his door. "June, are you all right?" He-yun's melodic voice called out. He opened the door to find her standing there, her blue luminescence providing gentle light in the dark hallway. "I felt your distress," she explained. "My people can sense strong emotions." June nodded and invited her in. They sat in the small living area of his apartment, the city lights of Seoul twinkling outside the window. "You were dreaming of Mars," He-yun said. It wasn't a question. June looked at her in surprise. "How did you know?" "You speak in your sleep." Her opal eyes studied him with concern. "What happened there, June? What haunts you so deeply?" June remained silent for a long moment. He had never told anyone the full story, not even his sister. "I was a lieutenant then," he finally began. The Mars colonies had been protesting for independence for years. Earth governments depended on Mars mining operations for rare minerals used in everything from computers to weapons. He-yun listened quietly as he continued. "When the protests turned violent, I was part of the peacekeeping force sent to protect Earth's interests." June's voice became hollow. "At least, that's what they called it. Peacekeeping." In his mind, he was back there again, the red dust of Mars swirling around their military compound. Captain Lee's voice coming through his headset. "We've located a rebel stronghold in Sector 7. Captain Lee had announced during the briefing. "We will neutralize it." "Sir," Joan had interrupted, looking at the holographic map. "Sector 7 is mostly civilian housing. There are thousands of non-combatants there. They're harboring rebels, Lieutenant Park. The order comes directly from Earth Command." June had stood up. "Sir, with respect, that would be a war crime." Captain Lee's eyes had turned cold. "Are you refusing an order, Lieutenant?" That night, Joan had secretly sent a warning to the civilian areas. Many escaped before the bombing began. But not all. Not nearly all. "I watched from the command center," Joan told He-yun, his voice breaking. 3,000 civilians died. Children, families. When I filed a report about what really happened, it disappeared. Captain Lee was promoted. I was transferred back to Earth. "And this is why you distrust your own leaders," He-yun said softly. June nodded. The bombing of Sector 7 was reported as a successful strike against terrorist forces. The real story never came out. He-yun's luminescence dimmed slightly, as if responding to his pain. "And your energy technology. How is it being used now?" June picked up a tablet and showed her recent news reports. While her fusion technology was indeed providing clean energy to millions, several nations had already created weapons using the same principles. "Your gift is being turned into more efficient killing machines," June said bitterly. "Just like I feared." The next day, they attended a global conference about the new energy technology. June watched He-yun closely as world leaders made grand speeches about peace and cooperation. Her expression remained neutral, but her luminescence fluctuated whenever particularly dishonest claims were made. After the conference, they walked through a park near the government complex. Children played on swings while parents watched from nearby benches. "Your species puzzles me," He-Yun said. "Such capacity for creation and destruction existing together." "We're contradictions," Jun agreed. "We can love our children while building weapons that could kill them." They stopped to watch a small girl feeding birds, laughing as they gathered around her. "In my culture," He-Yun said, "we believe that consciousness evolves in stages. My people passed through a phase similar to humanity's current state many centuries ago." "What changed you?" Jun asked. He-Yun watched the little girl with the birds. "A catastrophe of our own making. We nearly destroyed ourselves before we understood that our survival required a different way of thinking." "And what was that different way?" "We developed the ability to feel each other's suffering," He-Yun said simply. "Not just understand it, but actually experience it." Jun stared at her, a radical idea forming in his mind. "Is that something your powers could do for humans?" He-Yun's luminescence flickered anxiously. "Jun, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about my third wish," he replied, his eyes darkening with determination. 3 weeks had passed since He-Yun had given humanity the gift of fusion energy. Despite the potential for clean, unlimited power, Earth's governments had quickly moved to control it. Some countries already claimed to have developed weapons using the technology. Tonight, Jun had taken He-Yun to his favorite spot in Seoul, a quiet hillside overlooking the city. The skyline glittered with thousands of lights, beautiful from a distance. "Your world at night hides its troubles well," He-Yun said, her blue luminescence gentle in the darkness. Jun nodded. "Beauty and ugliness side by side. That's humanity for you." They sat in silence for a while. He-Yun's glow had weakened since granting the second wish. Though she never complained, Jun could tell it had cost her greatly. "I saw the news today," Jun finally said. "North region is threatening to use fusion weapons against South region if they don't surrender their water rights." "The very technology I provided," He-Yun whispered. "It's not your fault. It's what we do. Give us medicine, we make biological weapons. Give us nuclear power, we make bombs." Jun picked up a small stone and tossed it down the hillside. "We never learn." He-Yun turned to face him. "You've been thinking about your final wish." "Yes." Jun met her gaze steadily. "You told me your people evolved when they gained the ability to feel each other's pain." "It was a natural evolution for us," He-Yun cautioned. "It took centuries." "We don't have centuries," Jun replied. "Look at what we're doing to our planet, to each other. Another major war could end everything." He-Yun's expression grew troubled. "What exactly are you wishing for, Jun?" Jun stood up, his silhouette stark against the city lights below. "I wish for humans to feel each other's pain and suffering, not just understand it intellectually, but actually experience it." He-Yun gasped. "Do you understand what you're asking? This would fundamentally alter your species' neurological structure." "Exactly," Jun continued, his voice growing more intense. "When a soldier fires a weapon, they would feel their victim's pain. When a leader orders an attack, they would experience every death. When the wealthy ignore the poor, they would feel their hunger." "Jun, this is..." He-Yun struggled for words. "It's the only way," Jun insisted. "Technology won't save us. We'll just weaponize it. Political systems won't save us. They just shift power from one group to another." He-Yun stood up, her luminescence flickering with agitation. "This wish would require tremendous power. It would affect billions of minds simultaneously." "Can you do it?" Jun asked. He-Yun hesitated. "Yes, but at great cost." "What cost?" "A wish of this magnitude would require my life force," she said quietly. "I would not survive it." Jun stared at her, shocked. "You would die." "My physical form would fade, yes. My consciousness would return to the collective." Hei-yun placed her hand on his arm. But that is not why I hesitate. Then why? Because what you ask violates the most sacred principle of consciousness, choice. Her voice grew stronger. To force empathy on beings who have not evolved to handle it could cause tremendous suffering. Many would go mad from the sudden influx of others' pain. Jun paced back and forth, his mind racing. But isn't some suffering worth it if it prevents greater suffering? Think of the billions who might die in future wars. Let me explain exactly what your wish would do, Hei-yun said. Her luminescence brightened as she created a small holographic display between her hands. It showed human brain patterns shifting and changing. Every human would suddenly feel the emotional and physical pain of anyone they harm, directly or indirectly. The wealthy would experience the suffering of those exploited to create their wealth. Leaders would feel the consequences of their decisions. No one could ignore the results of their actions. The hologram expanded, showing people collapsing in streets, overwhelmed by sensation. But the human nervous system isn't designed for this. The psychological shock would be immense. Some would adapt, yes, but others would retreat completely from society, unable to function. Your civilization might collapse before it could rebuild. Jun watched the simulation with growing horror. I didn't realize. And most importantly, Hei-yun continued, her voice soft but firm, you would be taking away humanity's chance to evolve this ability naturally, through choice and growth. She stepped closer to him, her opal eyes intense. Is this truly what you wish for your people, Jun? To force this change upon them without consent? As the full implications of his wish became clear, Jun saw not salvation but another form of control, perhaps the most invasive kind possible. Hei-yun's luminescence suddenly flickered violently. Her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed to the ground. Hei-yun, Jun cried out, catching her before she hit the ground. Her light was dimming rapidly. Jun sat by Hei-yun's bedside in the hospital, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. The doctors had been baffled by her condition. Their machines could detect her vital signs, but her biology was beyond their understanding. Her blue luminescence had faded to a faint glow, barely visible even in the darkened room. 3 days had passed since she had collapsed on the hillside. 3 days of Jun barely sleeping, barely eating, consumed by guilt and worry. I'm sorry, he whispered, though he wasn't sure she could hear him. I almost became what I hate most. He thought about his wish, to force empathy on humanity without their consent. How was that different from Captain Lee forcing his will on the Mars colonists? Different methods, but the same arrogance. The same belief that he knew best, that the end justified the means. A soft sound drew his attention. Hei-yun's eyes were open, her opal irises focusing slowly on his face. You're awake, Jun said, relief flooding through him. The connection to your pain, it overwhelmed me, Hei-yun said weakly. Your desire was so strong, so dark, yet born from care for others. The contradiction was difficult to process. Jun took her hand gently. I was wrong. What I wished for would have been another form of violence. Hei-yun managed a small smile. You understand now. Over the next few days, as Hei-yun regained her strength, they talked for hours. She told him how her civilization had nearly destroyed itself before slowly, painfully developing natural empathic abilities. It had taken generations, with many setbacks along the way. There is no shortcut to evolution, Hei-yun explained one evening as they walked slowly through the hospital garden. Her luminescence had brightened somewhat, though it remained dimmer than before. Each mind must open itself to change. It cannot be forced. A week later, they sat together on a bench overlooking the Han River. The water reflected the city lights, creating ripples of color on its surface. I've been thinking about my final wish, Jun said. Hei-yun looked at him cautiously. And what have you decided? I don't want to change humanity by force, Jun said. Instead, I wish for knowledge. The knowledge your people gained on your path to empathic consciousness. Not the end result, but the journey itself. He-Yun's luminescence brightened noticeably. You wish to learn our ways. Not just me, Jun clarified. I wish for a way to share this knowledge with any human who chooses to learn it. A path that people can follow by choice, not by compulsion. For the first time since they had met, He-Yun laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. This wish brings joy rather than dread. Yes, I can grant this. The next morning, they met with world leaders to announce He-Yun's final gift to humanity. Unlike the previous gifts, this one came not as technology, but as cultural exchange. I will establish what you might call a school, He-Yun explained to the assembled officials. There I will teach the meditative and cognitive practices that helped my people develop natural empathy over generations. Any human who wishes may learn these techniques. And what's the catch? Asked one skeptical diplomat. The catch, He-Yun replied calmly, is that it requires work. There is no instant solution. Each person must choose this path daily, and the results come slowly. 6 months later, the Celestial Academy opened its doors in a neutral territory granted by international agreement. Students from around the world arrived, curious about the alien teaching. June stood beside He-Yun on opening day, watching the diverse crowd gathered in the main hall. Her luminescence had fully returned, glowing brightly as she prepared to address her first human students. Do you think it will work? June asked quietly. Will enough people choose this path to make a difference? He-Yun touched his hand gently. Some will reject it. Some will try and give up. But some will embrace it fully and teach others. It seems so small against the scale of our problems, June admitted. All great changes begin small, He-Yun replied. One mind shifts, then another, like stars appearing one by one until the sky is filled with light. As He-Yun stepped forward to welcome the first class, Jun noticed something extraordinary. Tiny points of blue luminescence had appeared on his own skin. Just a few specks, barely visible, but definitely there. It's already beginning, He-Yun whispered, noticing his surprise. Your final wish is being granted, starting with you. June looked out at the eager faces in the crowd. The path ahead would be long and uncertain, but for the first time since Mars, he felt something he had almost forgotten: hope.